Well, Brian McCann will obviously be the starting catcher next season, but Gary Sanchez is a very strong option, as is Austin Romine, who is back in the Yankees farm system. And as we take a look at those guys, I want to go back to when you were sort of on the cusp of the majors like Sanchez. There's no guarantee that he'll be with the team. It's a pretty good thought process there is, but did you know you were ready?
I knew I was ready defensively, but we're talking about two different guys. Myself, I was a catch-and-throw player who couldn't hit. Sanchez is a top prospect, as we already know. We talked about it, and he's got a really high ceiling. My ceiling was as a backup player, so I knew I could play defensively. I don't see Sanchez as a backup, and I know a lot of people are talking about, well, he could be the backup to Brian McCann this year, who had a great year last year. I think his overall development would be stunted a little bit. I think he might be better off playing every day in AAA. Sitting on the bench and playing once a week or twice a week is not the easiest thing for a young player who's played every day in the minor leagues and put up some good numbers.
I'm going to disagree with the guy who was a major league catcher and has brought some base hits to this studio. Bob, usually it's just you and me. Yeah. No major league hits. Right. 849 major league hits. McCann's going to be there. So at some point, Sanchez has to make that ascension. I agree with you in this way. I'd make him earn it. I'd come to spring training and say, this is between Romine and Sanchez. Let's see what he could do. And I'd make Sanchez earn that spot. But this is a guy who, if you count the Arizona Fall League this year, 25 home runs. The Yankees were aching for that right-handed power last season. Sanchez can provide it. Romine can't.
Now, in a perfect world, you'd have the DH spot open so Sanchez could have some at-bats there. That's not going to happen because Alex is going to be the DH. But the Yankees have historically played backup catchers that they assumed to one day be starters, starting with Posada. Then it went to Cervelli, and then it went to John Ryan Murphy. They don't have a problem with those guys sitting on the bench and then ascending or maybe using them as trade bait. But the interesting variable in this is Austin Romine, who really is the thing that wouldn't leave. He was off the 40-man roster at the time. He keeps fighting back. He's a good defensive catcher. If you get a $250 for them off the bench, they might stay with him and think along with John just to get Sanchez more ABs and repetitions.
Now, to John Ryan Murphy, for him last year, 67 games. He had 155 at-bats, so he did get some reps, and I get what you're saying. Here's the nice thing about Sanchez, though. We heard all about the offense, maybe not so great on defense, but he stepped that part of his game up as well.
Yeah, well, you wonder how much he stepped it up. I mean, did he step it up enough to be a guy that a pitching staff feels comfortable throwing to at the major league level? These are things that you have to watch in spring training. Austin Romine is a great fallback policy for the New York Yankees because you know what you're getting. He's been around forever. He's a quality guy, good guy and the teammate. And the other part about it, he'd be happy with his role on the team. Sanchez, you wonder if he gets a little itchy. I'm not getting enough at-bats. A young player sometimes has built-in excuses. We'll see how it all plays out.
There's also a little bit of a logjam, which Jack alluded to. You've got McCann signed for 3 more years. So the thought process was, well, he'll always move to first base when Teixeira's gone. Well, that's Greg Bird's spot now. So the only place he could really move is to Alex's spot as the DH, but that's in another 2 years. Whatever the case may be, Sanchez has to wait 2 more years. McCann's not going anywhere. Do you think it's going to serve him well to be in AAA for 2 years? Or by highlighting him as a backup catcher in the big leagues, maybe they use him as a trade piece because they've got more catching as well down in the minors.
I would also want Sanchez at the major league level for this reason. If McCann has an injury, I think that's Sanchez's spot. I think he deserves to be the guy who starts every day. So I'd prefer him over Romine. I agree with John that Romine is this perfect insurance policy. You have him sitting right there, ready to go. But I'd like to see Sanchez get the shot. Talking to Damon Oppenheimer in Nashville, who runs the draft for the Yankees, he said the arm is unbelievable. He talks about times of 1.8, which John can talk to. That's off the charts. The arm is great. The footwork got a lot better. It's calling a game. It's framing pitches. It's making your staff comfortable. You only get better at that via repetition.
The interesting thing is he's come from nowhere because he kind of dropped off the radar before last year, and he fought his way back. That tells him something as well. This guy's going to give up. He was with the Yankees, been with the Yankees since he was 16 years old. He knows the way they do things, and I think he finally got it last year, and that's impressive to them as well.
All right, final thing. Would a young John Flaherty or a young Gary Sanchez rather be getting full reps at AAA or being in the majors as a backup catcher?
A young John Flaherty wanted the big league money, the meal money, the pension time, all of that stuff.
All right, I kind of knew the answer to that. Meantime, let's go around the Yankees defense and take a look at what it possibly looks like for 2016. This is pretty much what we're thinking. There have to be some health issues, obviously, with Ellsbury, with Gardner, with Mark Teixeira. at first base. Michael, as you look around that infield and you look up the middle specifically, if everybody's healthy, that's a pretty good middle.
I think it's a very good defense except for right field, and Carlos Beltran would tell you that he's now below average defender, and he used to be a Gold Glove level defender, but knee problems and age have got him. But the Yankees have tried to tighten up their defense. That's one of the things that Brian Cashman's tried to do over the last couple of years. Now up the middle, you've got McCann with a really good year throwing out runners last year, and then you've got second base has really improved. Now, you can't take anything away from Stephen Drew, but I think the whole package is better with Castro. Gregorius showed you he's a top-flight defender, and you mentioned with health, Ellsbury, if he's healthy, is as good a center fielder as anybody.
I look forward to watching Didi and Castro. Two young guys, athleticism, speed up the middle. That's something I'm looking forward to. But they're going to have a partner in the infield who needs to perform better, and that's Chase Headley. Michael's right. Beltran is the one guy defensively who you look out there and say below average. Chase Headley is not a below average defender, I don't think, but he had a below average season. So he really needs to come back next season and perform a lot better. You see the offensive numbers, but look at that yellow line, guys. 23 errors and a lot of throwing errors. This is a guy who's got the speed and agility to make the play, and that would almost powder puff the ball to first base. I don't know what was going on throwing-wise, but he needs to tighten that up.
I know exactly what was going on throwing-wise. He had the yips a little bit. I mean, and a lot of big league players go through it. Once you start thinking about it, it gets worse and it gets worse. The only way it gets better is when he goes down to spring training and you have a good spring throw in the baseball, confidence comes back. But the one guy for me defensively you don't worry about is Ellsbury, but his entire game has to step up next year. I mean, Headley had a down year. Ellsbury did not have a good year. He's got to get better. He's got to do a better job at the top of the lineup.
You know, going back to Headley, the thing that scares me is the throwing, because how many people get the yips and then get rid of the yips? Usually it's always in the back of your mind and something could trigger it again. As for the offense, people are disappointed in his offense. Hit 259. That's 5 points lower than his lifetime average. He pretty much gave you what you should expect from him offensively, but I think the real shocker was the defense. He's got to be better than that. He's a Gold Glove level third baseman, and last year he was so far from that.
Yeah, and here's the thing. If everybody tells me how great I am at defense and then I'm not great at defense, that just kind of feeds off itself, Jack.
It does, and you can tell it was bothering him last year because this is a guy who takes a lot of pride in his defense. Now you should say, well, every player should take pride in his defense, but Headley is a guy, that was his calling card. That was a big part of his game. When he joined the Yankees earlier and before 2015, his defense is what stood out for me, and then it just vanished. He was not the same player. And to John's point, by the way, sometimes Ellsbury slips under the radar, and he shouldn't. I mean, this is a guy, 7-year, $150+ million contract, and he had a disappointing season. There are no two ways about it. He is a guy who really needs to have a resurgence.
I want to ask John this because I kept hearing from all of the coaches last year how hard Headley works. He's going to get out of it because he works. He works. He works. Can you work your way out of yips?
No. No, you can work your way out of maybe some technical and mechanical issues fielding the ball. But when you come up and you look over at first base, or for me it was looking at second base or even throwing the ball back to the pitcher, which I had a little trouble with at a certain time in my career, it's all mental. And it's a confidence thing. If you throw the ball well, you're like, all right, I'm over it, I'm over it. But that one bad throw brings you right back to where you were.
And, Bob, if you look at the 23 errors, if you watch every single game when Mark Teixeira was playing, he saved them at least 10 more.
Yeah.
It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, and to Jack's point, too, it was the intensity which with he threw the ball. It just sometimes it wasn't there. He was lobbing it. Want to take a look at the outfielders, too. Just go a little more in depth. We've talked about Ellsbury, but these are some of the outfield options. You've got Gardner, Ellsbury, and Beltran. Aaron Hicks is interesting. And then let's remember, Michael, last year, they used a lot of guys. Slade Heathcott, Mason Williams didn't stay healthy, but there were some other nice options to kind of fill in the blanks.
Well, I think Aaron Hicks is going to be important for this team. He probably takes over in right field when Beltran sits down after the 7th inning because they have to tighten up the defense in a close game. Heathcott is probably the second guy off the bench after that, but I think he starts the season in the minor leagues. I think Ackley is going to be active as well. They like his bat, and for a while there, we're considering going with him at second base, but the combination of Ackley and Refsnyder, I think that scared them a little bit defensively at second because they want to tighten up that area. But in the outfield, I think he could do a good job, and he showed he's got the perfect swing for Yankee Stadium. I think you can see a lot of Hicks and a lot of Ackley.
In the offseason, you look for things that can go right for you, that is going to make your team better. And I think one of the biggest things for the Yankees, we talk about A-Rod, we talk about Teixeira, it's Ellsbury and Gardner. You look at those guys about the first 3 months of last season, and these guys were dynamic. They were pestering pitchers. They were getting on base. And then I don't have the exact point where they both started to fall off, but we know They both had awful second halves, and they really need to produce next year because they can be so important for the Yankees. They can't have that kind of second half again next season.
I know everybody talked about Gardner and the injuries, but when you're out there playing and you put your name in the lineup, you're responsible for your production. And I'm totally on board with Jack. I mean, at the end of the year, we're doing games saying if they don't hit home runs, they don't score runs. And when you look at the two names there, Gardner and Ellsbury hitting first and second, that's unacceptable. That's a lineup that should be producing day in and day out, even when you don't swing for the fences. Get on base, use your legs. It's shocking how bad the numbers were for two guys who could really run.